Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a follow-up video to my Era 3 is a Joke video that I released early this week, and it's been suggested by WarGaming that I do this, and I've had a couple of people ask me in my Discord to do this as well, so I am going to address that video a little later on, but before I do, I want to cover something that has been on my mind for a while, and while I have the attention of WarGaming, now seems to be as good a time as any to talk about it. So there seems to be, in my opinion, a misalignment between the community, the passionate people that play the game, and you, WarGaming, the passionate people who make the game, who develop the game. There are two parties here in close interaction, and that does make this a relationship of sorts. And if things are going to improve, communication and legitimate understanding have got to be present. So WarGaming, if the community raises what it feels is an issue, please take the time to understand what the community means. Understand what the community is actually saying, not just what you think the community is saying. You have CCs, you have CAs, so if you feel for whatever reason that you're not close enough to the community to understand something, ask those that you've appointed that, are close to the community. Ask those that are in a position that are more likely to understand what is being asked or what is being said. Because, and there's a reason I say this, it's because time and time again, the community raises issues, the AVRE and the Tehran problem, for example, and the response from yourselves is the AVRE and Tehran are fine. This has happened enough that I now feel the need to provide a different angle on this, a different perspective on this, because I feel this is where the misunderstanding is. So here's a scenario for you. I go to the doctor because I feel ill. I've left it a week thinking I might get better with time, but I haven't. I get to the doctor, they take blood, they take fluid samples, and they come back to me and they say, "You're fine. Our results and our data show that you're within healthy limits." Now, if this were you, and you'd been sick for over a week, or longer than a week, a month, or whatever it is, and a doctor told you you were fine, you'd likely feel pretty perturbed, to say the least. If I'm so healthy, then why do I feel so sick? And in my opinion, this is what is happening in some areas of the game. I have left certain areas of the game for a while, hoping that time will solve the problems, but time hasn't solved the problems. All the community has, and that includes me, all the community has is a sense of feeling for the game. We can sense when something isn't right in the same way I know I'm sick without being a doctor. We don't have the data that you do, but if the community says it feels the game is sick, and the response from Dr. WarGaming is it's fine, then yes, tensions will rise. We will look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? Emotions will start to fray. And what's happening in this, this made-up scenario and in the game is that the game developer, Dr. WarGaming, has failed to understand what the patient is there, or why the patient is there, or what they're there for. The community also plays its part, and it may have also failed to communicate the issues in the game properly. The patient may have failed to describe the illness symptoms properly or adequately. And an example of this is my recent map rotation video. The forum for asking WarGaming questions is there, so thumbs up to WarGaming for that. The forum for WarGaming answering questions is there, again, thumbs up to that. But the lack of foundational understanding means that in some cases, the answers to these questions, they totally miss what the question was actually asking in the first place. So WarGaming, please take the time to understand us. If we say there is a problem, please come to us and discuss it with us. Take our hunches, take our vibes about the game seriously. Because we are exposed to the game for hour after hour. We feel it, we see what it is. And we're not misinformed. I mean, we might not have all the information that we don't have the data that you guys do, but we're not completely misinformed. And what we feel, what we say, there's value in what we have. And to the community, I say, You've got to ask well thought out questions and make sure your questions are specific and not open to interpretation, because if they're open to interpretation, then we're going to get answers that don't answer the question. And now I will get into addressing my Era 3 video. Earlier this week I released a video and I pointed out a couple of problems that I have with Era 3. And I will acknowledge that I didn't provide solutions to the problems, and that wasn't the ideal thing to do. I recognize that. So what I want to do is I want to provide a couple of solutions, but before I get to these solutions, I do want to make it crystal clear that what I'm about to say are not words just with a single voice. As of this recording, as of me sitting here recording this right now, there are 170 comments on my Era 3 is a joke video. And I'll take it a step further. These comments are not simply 6-word sentences that you can just throw away. Most of these comments are long, thought-out responses from fans of your game. And it's not just the community, there are also CCs echoing the sentiments that are portrayed in these well-thought-out comments. I'm not going to take up your time reading what people are saying. You guys know where the video is, and you can take a look at the comments if you wish. But what I will say, though, is that there's a lot of silent frustration, and I didn't realize how much silent frustration there was until I provided a commenting space for said frustration. So what I hope is that what follows will help you understand the community and understand what we feel needs to be done to restore certain areas of the game to health. So the first point I made was the lemming trains, and teams just YOLOing as a pack, and that being a viable strategy for winning in Era 3 now, and it's very common to see this happen. And the reason this is happening is because of the speed at which most of the tanks go. I would like to propose the following solution. Split the teams at spawn, and make the distance between the two splits large enough so that it dissuades all 15 tanks from taking the same line at the start of the game. What I'll do now is I'll bring up the mini-map for Dukla Pass, because this map is a great example. This is the go-to map for teams YOLOing down the same line almost every single game. This is the one map amongst others that needs a change. So at the moment, all 15 tanks spawn in A9 and A0, or flip it over to the other side, K1 or K2. Both teams are so close together that it is easy for the herding mindset to kick in. There's safety in numbers. I'll go with everybody else because that is my safest option. And what we're seeing in the game is proof of that concept. The teams that YOLO together win together. Now, in my opinion, if 7 tanks were to spawn in A6 and the remaining 8 in C0, the A6 group is so far away from the 0 line at the start that they will be more inclined to head to the 3 and 4 line than the 9 line. Same applies on the other side. Have 7 tanks spawn in J1 and the remaining 8 in K4. The J1 group will meet the A6 group and fight it out in E2, while the C0 group will meet the K4 group and fight it out in H8. I've used Dukla Pass because it is, like I've said, the worst map for YOLOing, but this spawn change concept could be applied to any map you choose. Alright, moving on to number 2. Having Mega Alpha and Pen Premiums in the game is fine, but handing them out to everybody is the problem. Tier 10 and Era 3 ought to be the pinnacles of the game. And I know this has been feedback from a long time ago when the first Tier 10 Premiums came out that you could purchase for free XP. This is the feedback that was provided then, and I guess I'm providing exactly the same feedback now. The Tier 10 part of the game and the Era 3 part of the game should only be accessible to those that have dedicated enough time and earned their way there. So please do not put an Era 3 or a Tier 10 as a Season Pass tank ever again. What I would like to see for these tanks is the introduction of long-term missions. Missions that require, for example, 1 million damage in heavies, or earn 5 pools medals. Challenges that are incredibly hard, but the reward for these missions would be, the Object 477 or the Object 292, as they are in game right now. Not only would we have fewer of them in game, which would mean the health of the digital ecosystem would be maintained, it would also mean that there would be more respect for the players. At the moment, if you do 15,000 damage in a 292, you'll just get an eye roll from the community. If you had to work your ass off though, and you were one of a handful of players that had the 292, and then you did 15,000 damage in it, I would tip my hat to you. That 15k damage may have come slightly easier to you because the tank is overpowered, but at least you earned that reward. It wasn't just handed to you like a crutch. Moving on then to number 3. Premium tanks are sellable commodities, and we as the community, we buy them and we play them in the digital ecosystem of the game. Like any ecosystem though, balance needs to be maintained. I understand that business is business and money is a priority, but the health of your digital ecosystem is also equally as important. This year, you've released 5 very good premiums in Era 3 alone. The Weasel, the Thumper, the 477, the 292, and the Jaguar 1. These top predators are great for sales. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're incredibly popular, and I'm sure they bring in a huge amount of cash, which is good for profit margins and everything business related. I understand that. I get that. But they have come at the cost of the health of the Era 3 ecosystem. The incentive to play tanks that are lower down in the food chain has gone, and the shared vibe of the community goes possibly as far as the incentive to play the top tech tree tanks has also gone. My solution to this is one of 2 options. 1, adjust these premiums so they better fit inside the Iron Triangle and the current state of the Era 3 tech trees. Or 2, buff all of the Era 3 tech tree tanks to match the performance levels of these premiums. And here are some changes I would suggest to these premiums that I've just mentioned. Increase the Weasel's concealment to 250 to 300 meters. Reduce the pen of the 292 to match the Thumper. Add a frontal weak spot to the 477. Reduce the alpha of the Jaguar to 1200. And personally, some people might disagree, but I think the Thumper is actually, of all of them, the Thumper is the most okay of all of them. So I've made some suggestions there. You may agree or disagree. I've provided numbers that may work, they may not work. But what I think really matters here is that WarGaming at least tries to work with us on this. At least tries to change things. To what? I don't know. But trying to change stuff and work with us is better than nothing at all. And finally now, I'll move on to number 4. Map design. The maps we are playing on have been in the game for years. Long before Cold War and the pace of Cold War was ever a thing. If none of what I've said happens, which I sincerely hope isn't the case, I do hope that some of the things I've suggested do happen, but if nothing happens, then I think at the very least we need maps that are designed for the pace of the Cold War tanks. Klaus, earlier this week, made a video on exactly this point, and the way he put it, and I like the way he put it, what he said was, the maps we have now are like asking a full football team to play on a 5-a-side pitch. It can be done, but it's going to be a mess. The one map that we have that doesn't devolve into a YOLO fest every game is Nebelberg. That map is great. I love it. It is big, it has variety from a topography point of view, and it is always a joy to play. Whoever designed Nebelberg, the map design team, I don't know how it works at WarGaming, but if you have a map design team, they nailed that. They absolutely nailed that map. That is exactly what we're looking for Cold War, especially Era 3. I would go as far as saying it's perfection. I really, really love that map because it's on the scale that can accommodate Cold War tanks. And in my opinion, if we're going to get more Cold War maps for Era 3, we need them to be at least 2 kilometers square, ideally. That's what I think. That's how big I think the maps need to be. I don't know how big Nebelberg is, but whatever formula you guys use for Nebelberg, just do that. Just keep doing that. It's perfect. Okay, folks, this has been a slightly longer one, but I hope it's been productive. I was focusing a lot on Era 3, but I did try to include some World War II in there as well, because I know that, and I've read some of the comments, I know that this isn't just isolated to Era 3. Some people think it's happening all across Cold War, some people think it's happening in Tier 8, Tier 9, Tier 10. So I hope that I've been able to include everybody that plays this game, not just the section of the community that plays Era 3. If you have anything you'd like to add to what I've said, then please leave your ideas in the comments section. WarGaming, if you want to talk to me about what I've said, then please do not hesitate to contact me directly on Discord. And with all that said, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, if not a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.